Well, we have a lot to go over because a lot actually happened, even though it looks like we didn't get very far. I just want to start with the basics and then we're going to get into the details. And there's a lot of details here. To be clear, you're having a massive, massive rotation. And I do want to address it, but I do think we should get into this first. The very first thing that I would note is that we're unable to clear that open that happened on Friday, October 10th. Now, whether or not we're going to clear it or we're not going to clear it remains to be seen. But when we get into this on a much shorter time frame and just drop it from there, you can see that this level in and of itself where we opened, you're not able to get over that level. Here it's 67.42.54. And if we go and take a look at this, we'll do it on the ES and you can see it even cleaner. And then we can do it on the SPY. But really what we should really just do it on, for me, is just do it on the NASDAQ. It just thinks it'll be easier to see it that way. There's the top of it and there's the open. And if you get to the opening price of that, you're just hitting it and you're just bonking your head. You can't get back up to that 6,800. Now, a lot of people will say, well, we could obviously flip it. Why didn't we today? Is going to really be and I guess when I look at it like this is really where I want to go with it. I see that you rallied from this level. And then all of a sudden from Friday on, it was just straight up. And now what's really left? You're in the same exact position you were at before. You're unable to get through this. You have that open from here, but you're really unable to get through all this. You blew through everything and then you just stopped. The other thing that you saw today was you saw a lot of rotation in names, and I'll get to it, but just take a look here on the NDX as well. You're unable to lift through this. And if you're unable to get through it now, you have to ask yourself what's going to get you there. Now, you did get some good news after hours, and I will get to that because you had some of these banking companies that people were worried about. And quite frankly, the banks are coming out and they're looking great. And the names you're rotating into should lift the market or at least keep the market stagnant. But if you miss the rotation, you're going to have a real problem here, I think. And you should be able to see it today because a lot of people went long the same names and then they just got blown out. They're not understanding what's happening. So if we take a look at the NDX in and of itself, you couldn't get through that as well. If we take a look at the NDX here, anyone would see this chart and be happy. I'll be happy when you're over it and then you start making higher highs, maybe a retest of that, then you have my attention. I don't know that you're just going to clear this and that's going to be it and everything's going to be rosy. And I really think that people have to wait and see and have a wait and see approach to this. One of the big things that I wasn't even able to go over on Saturday because Saturday's video was so long, and I will link that at the end, but if we go and take a look at summation, McClellan summation here, and in front of you is the New York Stock Exchange composite, and then you have your zero line right here, and then you can see how we're rotating down. Just to be really clear, this is the breadth of the market, and what the summation does is just measure the McClellan oscillator. It is very clear that the breadth of the market is getting worse. As a matter of fact, I went over one slide yesterday that the breadth is so bad that it's almost bullish how bad it is. That's great, but it needs to turn. And it's trying. I'll show you a graph, but it's trying. This is what I want to show you because I think this is the most important thing for people to get. The names that you were playing before are probably not where you want to go. Now, you are hopefully able to make your own decisions because if not, you shouldn't be in the market. So everything that I go over here is information education. But if you look at markets like this and movements like this, like take ASTS, you have your shooting star, and then you have your day here, and here's your doji. Here's your open, and they take you higher, and then they take you over the low of the day. This is pretty much the exact opposite of any pattern that you ever want to see when you're long. That you don't want to see this. You don't ever want to see them take you up and then drop you down in the end of the day, because that means retail bought, institutions sold, and they lifted it to fill who? Retail, so institutions could get out. And you're seeing it everywhere, and you're seeing it in a stronger sense. So here we are with the IREN, and they lift us up only to take us back down. And we're hitting that 57 level again, trying to hold on to it, but drop this to a 5. And the reason why these names are important, we'll drop this right down here. You see that is your put wall, but right there in red. But you have to be careful here because eventually, if you keep knocking on the door long enough, it will open. You see how you hit this and you would just bounce almost immediately. Hit it, and then you gapped up, couldn't get near it, hit it, and then the bounce all of a sudden starts getting what? Like I don't know how to say it, but it just starts getting soggy, I guess is the best way for me to say it. All of a sudden, you just don't lift the same exact way. And when you don't lift the same exact way and you don't bounce as hard off a level, that level becomes weaker. That's definitely something we need to watch here with some of these names. So whether they break hard or it's a soft break, I'd rather break hard because then that's the end of it. But any name like this, it's not just this name, you're seeing it in all of it. You're seeing it like Wolf. They're all of these kinds of names, they all kind of reverse today. And it's not a really good sign. RKLB had great news. Again, you rallied all the way up only to get smoked end of day and close at the low. And it's not just the names that that we're trading. It's all of these names that are smaller that are doing that. We are doing this rotation, and I'll show you in a second, but I just want to point this out because it really doesn't matter which one of these suckers that you're looking at. They're all kind of doing the same thing. I was surprised to see that even Western Digital was doing this, where you were popping over and you're up to 131, and then by the end of the day, you're down to 121. That's a reversal. That's a failure. That is a reversal and a failure. So if I look at that and then go take a look at the other storage names that are out there, take a look at STX. Like, this is the exact opposite of what you're looking for from a name. This is not what you're hoping to see. So this morning we did a day trade. We did a couple of them. I'll show you a couple that we did, but I went long this because on the break, we got over the call wall. It looked like it was going to rip. I'll show you the trade and then I'll show you what happened. So if we take a look at this off the open, it was just like all of a sudden you ripped. We didn't buy that. You came back and you tested this over and over again. And then we bought it in here and then it just rips. I was looking to try to stay in it to get back to here. And I told myself if it took out this low, I'm going to get out. Took out the low, I got out of the way. And I didn't stay in the trade. I could have taken like $1. It's not really what I was looking for. So I just took the risk and got stopped out of the trade. Take a look at that level all day and what that level became. You could never get over it. You just kept battling it all day long. So whoever bought here changed their mind later as the day came on. Again, not really what you want to see. So if the storage names are coming in like this and we're seeing these movements in the middle of the day, you want to be careful because a lot of people are just like, oh, it's over because the NASDAQ's back. The NASDAQ's back, but the NASDAQ's back and you're starting to see some of these names come back. Now, when I say some of them, like here is the NASDAQ 100. And if we go here, you're going to see that this is marked on Friday and we closed over. What I think you should be looking at are the NASDAQ 100. I think you need to start looking at the mega cap names because it seems to me that they're getting defensive. So if we took a look at it, and I'll show it to you from this standpoint because I think it's a lot easier to see. So if we took a look at MAGs and we divided MAGs by the Q, and we're going to get this pattern. And this is just the MAG 7 divided by the NASDAQ, the whole NASDAQ. And what you're going to note is that from this area on, from about September on, you popped over, then you couldn't go anywhere. And then by the 15th, you popped over. And then the MAGs outperformed for like a day or two. And then that was it. And then for the past, what would we say? For about the past 2 months, have you really gone anywhere from here to here? You haven't gone anywhere on the Magnificent Seven. They haven't gone anywhere in regards to where the NASDAQ is, right? Meanwhile, the NASDAQ keeps hitting highs, but the Mag 7's not going anywhere. So if we take this down and we drop this to a 5-minute, and we just look at this just for a second, you're going to note something in here where we just talked about how we rallied up and then we actually sold off. But realistically, once again, we really haven't gone anywhere for about 2 months in regards to the Magnificent Seven versus the NASDAQ. It's just completely outperforming the NASDAQ or underperforming the NASDAQ. Well, if you take a look what started happening last week, you'll start seeing that you have this level in here. And on this level, if you look at your DTL downward trend line, you're starting to flip. And so this is pretty interesting stuff. Now, I could look here and say, well, the Mag 7 versus the Qs, it's the double top. Maybe it is, but you're starting to curl again. And I actually think it makes sense because you're getting defensive. You're coming into the end of the year and earnings are coming into these names in the next week. And so what we're really starting to see here with some of these players is they're saying to themselves, I want to be in these names because the bars are low. The bars are very low for the Mag 7 names. We're not going to get into it. Maybe we'll cover it on Saturday. So where does this put us? And that's where it gets super interesting. So you start looking at these names and let's take a look at this versus some of these other names. So here's Google today, and Google is hitting and closing at an all-time high. Just got done their FTC case. This will be their first earnings quarter without it. And so, maybe that'll be a good idea. Maybe that'll be a bad idea. So you can see what's going on with Google. Amazon shut down half the internet today with AWS. And what's the stock do? Opens at the low, closes at the high. Rotation. You're seeing rotation into the larger names. Meta. It's like everyone just realized they own Instagram. And all of a sudden, we're starting to break out of this area. Now, you're not through perfectly on this bar, but I do think that it's worth noting things because the devil's always in the details. So if we mark off that open, and the open of that bar is going to be right there at that 730.92. Well, where did we close, right? And so you come here and you look at that close. Let's move that out of the way so that you can see the close. 732.17, okay? And so then we put this back there to the open. And what we've done is we've closed over that level. If we take a look at the Qs, have the Qs closed over that level? And the answer is no, they have not. Has the NDX? Yes, it has. So what are we saying here? We're not broadening out. They're going into the highest quality NASDAQ names. Watch what I just did again. Here's the NASDAQ as a whole, and you can see that level. Watch when we go in the NASDAQ 100. See how it closed over that level? Then you go take a look at these names like Meta. Look what Meta did, right? So you're starting to see that. Apple breaking out because they have an orange phone now. So that's a good thing. And now you're hitting all-time highs. So for me, when I see this kind of stuff, try to hit an all-time high, fail, pull back, and then run up again to hit that all-time high. You want to pay attention to this going into earnings because it's very clear that these guys want to own these names going into earnings next week. Now, whether these names have follow through or not, you're going to want to watch. But that rotation is very real, and it's definitely there, and it's definitely happening. And I do think it's a defensive position for these guys versus what else they've been dealing with. Now, as far as news out there, and we had to see what was going to happen, Zion apparently did not be a dumpster fire after hours. Zion did not blow up. Their call is at 5:30 at the time of recording this. I haven't listened to it yet, but earnings were great. And so you see this massive sell-off down to 46, back to 54. Now you have the inside bar, and now you're going to see that the stock has the ability to go all the way back to where it was previously. It looks like it's going to be a full retreat on it. Now, what's so fascinating about this was one of the reasons why the market dropped. And we didn't rotate into those same names. We did not go back into those same names. Now you have Wall tomorrow, which will be the next one. And Wall right now is trading up. And you're at around $78, closing at 75. And this will be the other one that dropped, and that's due tomorrow. So you did get some really positive news there, and that's exactly what we were looking for. And I think it's important to understand that this was one of the big catalysts. We have CPI on Friday, but one of the big catalysts was, geez, these names are in a lot of trouble, and what are we going to do? Like now we have the next big problem, right? And it doesn't look like we have the next big problem here with the regional banks. And the first shoe to drop on this was going to be Zion. And it doesn't look like that's a problem anymore. So Wall should bounce back tomorrow. We saw this with regional banks, or regional financial, I guess they call themselves regional financial now, on Friday where they had a good quarter and then it was weak. Then we had Jefferies. Jefferies is bouncing back. It looks like it's not the end of the world for them anymore, even though they took this huge write down. Ares on the private credit side, they're bouncing. Al on the private credit side, they're holding. So what are we really having here? Well, we're having the names that probably should never have been where they are. Now, let me just disclose this. I'm short RGTI. I am short. Let me do it this way. I am long this RGTZ, which is a 2X bear fund because this thing has no business being where it is. And then I am also short this. So this is RGTX, and I'm short that as well. These things are not for the faint of heart. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But, in 2 days, 3 days, this thing's gone from 500 to 268. I will short these 2X, these long ones, especially for these single stock names. It is so much better to short these than to actually even think about doing puts. If you have the ability to do it, you should do what you're comfortable with. But I mean, this thing's already from this level, 499 to 265. And then you go and look at RGTI and you're at from like 57 to 43. These things just bleed. And I don't think anybody really even knows what they're buying. The RGTZ is another way to go long or short it by being long. And I have that as well. But the moneymaker is really just finding these 2X long single stock names. It's really kind of fascinating to me that these things even exist and that they're allowed to exist, because then people will buy them and they'll sit with them and say, oh, I'll just wait for the stock to come back. And they have no idea how they're calculated. They don't have a clue. Like you look at MSTR, for example, and I also want to cover this with what's going on with Bitcoin. But when this popped over here at 538, and then people were looking at like MSTX, which was the 2X one, and they're waiting for this thing to come back. And you can see where it's at like 215 and this is at 17. People don't understand that this stuff is calculated daily. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, never, ever, ever buy one of those, because there's a reason why this went from 534 to 296, right? And you look at the difference of that, and then you go and take a look at something like MSTX, and there's a reason why this went from $215 to $17. All right, there's a huge difference here. So something like RGTX, when you look at this stuff, you could actually go long RGTI and actually short RGTX, and people would be like, well, you'll never make any money. Okay, go and take a look at that trade right now. So if you went RGTI, right, long, and then RGTX short, and if you looked at this over the past 3 days from that area, it's crazy what you've made if you really understand how to use these things. But just off that trade in the past 3 days, you're up 40%, and you'd still have the hedge. But I just short it because it's easier. These kinds of names don't deserve to be where they are. The fact that this kind of crap was even allowed to be out there for retail to buy is just ridiculous, because candidly, people have no idea what they're buying. But you have a company out there, and this company makes 1.8 million a quarter. I mean, that's what you're making here. I get it. And maybe if the CEO didn't sell his, I think he sold his entire position. If I'm wrong, correct me in comments. But the idea that this thing's going to miraculously stay up here because someday these things might make money, like, it is what it is, guys. And you just don't want to be there when the music stops. And you can see it with IONQ. What I think is going to happen here, and this always happens on these secondary names, real companies get lumped into this, not the IBMs of the world. The IBMs of the world actually will probably start seeing more money pour into them. And I'll explain why. If I own QTUM, or I own one of the ARC funds, and I want exposure to quantum. You see how ARC's actually up today when all this garbage is actually blowing up? The reason for that is because what they're going to do is they're going to buy the real quantum names. They're going to buy IBM. And the quantum fund's going to buy IBM. So they're going to get the inflows, right? And the outflows are going to be these names. And it's going to be like a golf ball through a garden hose. So like ION, I think we're fortunate enough that this has one too, right? So if you shorted this 3 days ago at 130, you're already at 70. This thing's got 30, 40 written all over it. No different than MSTX. You just have to have I'll call it ability to be able to stay short this stuff. And some people have that ability and some people don't. And by ability, it just means the wherewithal and the funds. But this stuff's just going to absolutely implode. This stuff's absolute garbage. And then what they'll do with it is they'll just reverse split it. And that's fine. They just repackage it and sell it again. It is what it is. But when that stuff comes in, this is where my head's going with it, because this is what usually happens. They trash everything. So companies like IREN, yeah, maybe this company got way ahead of itself, but it's a real company and there's real business there and there's real demand. Same thing with WLF, real demand for real product. You're just going to get trashed because they're going to take all the secondary names down and they're going to rotate into the primary names, which is exactly what they're doing. So if that's what they're going to do, then we might as well just play the game that they're playing. On a side note, I do think you see some kind of rally in the KRE tomorrow, especially with what you saw happen tonight. You're already starting to see it a little bit with what happened with Zion. And again, we have that conference call at 5:30, so we'll have to see how that goes. But I think you have a shot at that. And of course, you have Tesla this week, and the stock's acting fairly decent ahead of the quarter. You did bid up here a little bit. I do think it's good that you're seeing rotation into the bigger names. I'd be more upset if you weren't seeing any rotation into them. And you're even seeing JP Morgan try to get back over the 55. You're even seeing Goldman try to get back over the 55. So they are struggling. That actually might have even done it today. You might have actually gotten back over. It looks like you did. So that's a pretty interesting spot right there. And that's definitely something worth paying attention to. It's a really tight area to get involved in that. So definitely worth paying attention to. And let's just watch this real carefully right here and see how this goes. Click on that for tomorrow. I'm curious about this because if you get a reversal in these names, for example, if we get a reversal in the big dogs off of this news, then that's going to bode really well for us going forward into November and December, because then we got through the blackout period and everything else. And then next week you have the Metas and the Microsofts of the world for earnings, and then it's over. And then you just kind of go into the end of the year. And that's really what we're looking for. If you're trying to get into the community, FYI, please look this week for a letter. We're going to send another batch out. I give everyone the opportunity to talk, do an onboarding call with me. So it takes time to get through everybody. That is it.